observe it like it's an alien planet and you're visiting the planet. And what do you see and what is working and how does it feel? Because there's so much clutter from what everyone else tells you to think.
What's up, traders? Welcome back to another episode of the Desire Trade podcast, where we interview traders all around the world about different topics. And my goal, as always, with this podcast, to be able to teach you things that you need to know on all the different aspects of trading, psychology, risk management, strategies, and everything around. People have different trading style, they have different skills, and you need to be able to kind of learn these over time if you want to be able to become a good trader. Now, in this episode, I'm sitting down with Brad Jelinek. Brad is a full-time trader who also hosts a podcast called the Trader Life Podcast. And we discuss things in this interview about things you learn throughout the podcast, what he has to do to become a good trader, things about the right mindset, the right psychology, and having the right lifestyle as a trader. There's a lot of things you can learn from this podcast for sure, and I hope you'll take notes and listen carefully. Brad and I agree on the same topics quite a bit because we have been interviewing traders both for a long time, and we also trade by ourselves, so we have real world experience. One thing I would appreciate is if you like this interview, please share it after that. Share it with traders around you, so that other people can benefit from it and that more people are going to be able to learn the right skills in trading and be impacted by the right people. So without further ado, let's dive into the interview. Brad, how are you doing today?
I'm great. You?
Awesome. Very good. Pleasure to have you here on the podcast and on YouTube as well. So I wanted to start with, what is one quote that inspires you?
Oh boy. So many different quotes I could pick. I think, I don't mean to dance around the question, but I feel like quotes usually are good with context and kind of where I am in my cycle, and it depends on what I'm going through at the time. I think right now maybe it's trading is really hard, but sometimes it's easy, and you really want to survive for when it's easy, because it does get easy at times, but that's certainly not the case all the time. So maybe that's one that's been in my head recently.
May I ask, why is that? What's been on your mind lately?
Yeah, it's on my mind lately because what we're witnessing right now is it's a manic market in some ways, and I think a lot of people are having a lot of success in the market because it's going up almost every day. And I think other people are very frustrated by it because it may not fit their style of a back and forth market, or market that mean reverts, or many different things that we've seen in the past. And I don't think that, all markets are unique and different in their own way, but when it gets like this, I think 2000 was the last one I remember that was similar. I think a lot of people have said that, but sometimes your experience can actually hurt you. It's maybe similar to cryptocurrency in 2017, and stuff just runs and runs and runs, and you want to get out too early, or you think something's stupid and you want to take the other side of it. And the years of being in front of the screen can sometimes not work out for you when things get different like this.
That's very true. I think we didn't fall into some habits, and then it's kind of hard to change things or be open-minded over time.
There's no doubt about it. I think that's one of the things that you have to do over your career, is you have to remain flexible. And it's everyone says it, and there's a lot of quotes that justify thinking that way, but it's another thing to actually do it. And I think sometimes the pain and suffering that you have to go through to get there is what you need. And I wish I could just listen to what everyone told me and learn that way, but you know how it is.
Definitely. So you're hosting a podcast as well, the Trading Life Podcast. I'm curious to hear what made you want to start that podcast. How did that happen?
Yep. I think I've been doing this around 20 years now almost, and I don't remember exactly, but it's something like that. And it's a desire to connect with others. I have a few really close friends who are also trade, and I talk to on a daily basis, at least one or two of them on a daily basis. And I always enjoyed connecting with other people, and also just for my own benefit, hearing what other people are doing, what's working, what's not working. And I think what really drives me to do it is just to connect on the psychological and emotional level and help people with the journey, and to share my story and the things that I go through, and just pass that on as much as I can, and then pick up things from other people, because it can be a lonely profession when you're, especially now with this virus, at least in the US, we're kind of stuck at home and we're trading, and it's just, you're in your own bubble. So it's kind of a good outlet that way.
I don't know about you, but when I began my podcast, I knew barely no traders, and like maybe one or two traders maximum. And that just expanded my connection and the things I learned for sure over time. So you probably seen the same as well.
It's a great benefit, isn't it, of having a podcast? And I made mine is on Anchor as easy as possible. I pick up my phone, I talk into it, I don't edit it. And it's just very simple, because if the bar is not that low, then I'm probably not going to do it. And I'm doing it for my own enjoyment and for connecting. So I needed to do something I could continue. And I was lucky enough to have traded with a lot of people when I was in Chicago. So I met a lot of friends physically that way. But now I've moved to a different part of the country, and it's just, I don't do that as much. I have a young kid now, and it doesn't happen as much. So this is a great way to move forward. And I think a lot of people always ask about how to build your network, and you're doing it, I'm doing it, and people can email other traders that they hear and listen to. And usually, when you listen to somebody, you might connect with the energy or the way that they talk about things, and that's usually a good indication that it might be for you, and others may not be for you, even though they're very successful.
So what made you start to get involved in trading in the first place?
When I was in junior high school, I had a physical education class that was just mandatory, and one of the teachers was always monkeying around. This was during the tech stock run up. I don't even remember what year it was. It was like the mid to late 90s or something. And I thought it was fascinating that you could play this game for a living and not have to do work. And I was just hooked right away at a young age. So just since junior high school, really, high school, it was always reading, studying markets. In college, it was after my homework was done, it was looking over, reading books, trading, making money, really knowing what I was doing, but really just dead set on getting a job trading. And there really never was a plan B for me. It was just plan A. And I figured that out pretty young. I don't really know why that is, that we know these things young. I think sometimes people don't, and they find out later in life. But for me, it just was that way.
And how was your learning curve? Did you learn things easily, or did you have a tough time to get better involved with trading?
When you've been doing this 20 years, you've felt every awful pain and suffering that it can inflict on you. And you've also had a lot of success and have kind of run the whole gamut. And that's how I feel right now. Sometimes when I think something will never happen again, it does. When you have a style or a strategy that you like, it might go away for years and then it comes back. And momentum trading, mean reversion trading, event trading, relationships, correlations, they work or they don't work. And it's a big art project of adapting to what's going on, and nothing stays the same, because if it did, it'd be a very easy profession and we'd all do it. So I think the learning curve was a lot. It just was. When I started off in junior high, I was trading. My parents owned a water well drilling business and in northern Wisconsin, and they had to bail me out of a soybean margin call because I did something I didn't know what I was doing. I lost a bunch of money, and I had to work the summer to make that back. And I did that, and they just wanted to support me learning, really. So that was a lesson. I don't remember what I learned at the time, but I remember then in the tech run up in 2000, I did really well. I turned some money into a bunch more money, and then I bought a car at one point for myself, which I needed, and I blew the rest of the money. I didn't know what it meant to buy a pullback. I thought, oh, it's going up, and it's just got to have to keep going up. So kind of like right now, buying every pullback, maybe it works, and then until it doesn't. And I didn't really know what that meant. So fast forward to now, the lesson is take profits, be careful. And back then it was reckless abandon, make as much money as possible, because you don't know the fear of the other side. You don't care. And I was younger too. So it's kind of an example where experience can sometimes hold you back a little. But it keeps you alive and helps you to thrive later. So you wouldn't trade it, but.
Are you able to pinpoint exactly what was the toughest part of your trading journey? Was it like one thing that you had a hard time to learn or to practice or to implement?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, I now hire a coach that helps me, and that's kind of where I'm getting this. But it's years later. It's actually a lot of stuff, just personality and childhood things that come up in trading. And what I mean by that is my dad would wake up really early in the morning, and he was self-made entrepreneur, and it was work hard, get up at 6 and keep working, and good things will happen to you. And that was something I carried with me. And it's a really tough thing to carry with you in trading. And the reason that is because you can work really hard, but you might not get results in a linear fashion at all. I would never say you shouldn't work hard, but looking at charts on Sunday night for 3 hours isn't going to mean you're going to make any money. In fact, it might mean you're going to force on Monday and do worse, because a lot of times stuff shows up kind of innately on its own. It's a little bit intuitive, and you kind of know it when you see it. And there's a very delicate process to figuring that out. And this idea of working hard nonstop and being kind of in basketball, they call you a gym rat. When you never left the gym, you're always shooting. And that attitude, I wouldn't say it's bad, but it doesn't necessarily work that way in trading. So I've had to learn to unwind a lot of that and let things kind of flow when they flow. When the market shows up and it's my game, I'm successful. But when I force it, when it's not, it's painful. And I think that's the biggest thing that I have had to learn, and I continue to kind of work with even now.
You're very right about these childhood issues. So I learned a principle like maybe 2, 3 years ago that the way you grew up could impact your trading, but I didn't really believe it. Or I thought, oh, it's like for other people. And then about 3 months ago, when I began to do coaching with the psychology coach, that's when I learned really like how this impact, and especially for me, how that's worked for me. So it's interesting to learn, and I think it takes time to be able to understand that for most people.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I don't think I understood that 10 years even into. I mean, I had a lot of good years 10 years in, but I didn't understand that to the level I do now until I really started to work on that part of things. I wish I had spent the money to do the coaching a lot earlier. It's just, I didn't. And so, but I'm doing it now. And it's been really, it also makes you a lot happier in your life because you start to see that a lot of these things play out in your life as well, where if you want to grind and push it, it's tough. And it doesn't mean that there's a time to grind and push, but it's probably not all the time. And that for me has always been a little bit of a hard one.
Very interesting stuff. So, what is your trading style these days? How do you describe it? What market do you trade primarily, and what is your kind of type of trading?
Well, I'll walk you through it. So it started with trading futures in Chicago. I was at a firm, and it was a prop firm. So basically, I just did my own thing, traded, and I would learn through observing other traders and kind of my own trial and error process. And that went on for probably 10 years. And then I left on my own and primarily day trading, S&P index futures, Euro stocks futures, DAX, mostly equity. But I would do fixed income and currency on events, ECB meetings, Federal Reserve meetings, 10-year, 30-year auctions. So I kind of developed that skill set, and I would consider myself more of a big day trader, meaning that I would like to day trade when it's a busy day, when there's an event, when there's a lot of volatility. And when it's choppy and slow, I wasn't really the best grinder. So I would kind of take a lot of paper cuts and then have big days when it made sense. So that's kind of the skill set I took with me. That the day trading doesn't happen for me as much anymore, unless I was doing it a lot in March when the market blew up because it was busy and it was worth it. So the day trading now is kind of I would say it's a luxury that I'll fall back on when the market gives me big intraday swings or news. I will trade the market during the day, kind of use that skill set. But since I left, I've had to develop other things. So when the market keeps going up like this, the day trading kind of sucks because it just grinds up every day and you don't have a lot of movement up and down. So I got into stocks, and in the stock market, I'm involved in a small cap group, and there's a lot of earnings winner type things. And I do a little bit of that. I would say that's more of a secondary strategy that I'm still trying to learn. And then my major strategy across, I think if I had to combine it between day trading and swing trading, find stuff to do. So just a general example would be, I like to have the market decide that a trend is going to happen. And then I like it when some news comes out that doesn't really make sense and brings that trend back. And I'm looking to re-enter and have it make a new high. That would be a real generic way. So there's a lot of things in the world. It's not quantitative. It's not something I can program. It's very artistic, intuitive, I would say. I can define it, but I like to know when people are stuck. I want to know why. If someone's stuck short, why would they be short? What are they thinking? What's going to happen if they're wrong? That's kind of how I look at things. So a lot of it is, yes, I care about technicals, but not exclusively. I want to know the biggest moves tend to happen when everyone's jammed the wrong way, or they bail out on some headline that doesn't really make sense. So a lot of it is kind of setting the path, I guess, to wait for those things to show up and then aggressively trade them when they do, versus just kind of being there every day, running my scans and doing something. Doesn't work as well for me. I know for others it might, but I've never been able to just do it that way.
So with that being said, what does a day look like in your life as a trader?
Yeah, that's another fun question. That's evolving every year. Used to be, for a long time, it was get up at 6 a.m. and trade for 8 to 10 hours in front of the screen. Got sick of that. Got older and just didn't want to do that as much. It's a grind, but I had to do it when I was younger to make money. And now that I've kind of padded myself and done better and don't have to do that as much, I've kind of moved into more of a, I would say, intuitive, artistic type day where I get up, I look at the market. I usually have something on. I check the news. I see, is there any stupid news? Is there anything that's kind of popping up on my radar? Is it a busy enough day to be day trading? Which usually no right now, but if it is, I'll be in there, like Federal Reserve, maybe the unemployment report, stuff like that. And then it's just kind of wait and see. So it's go on a walk. I keep my news service on. I read a book, listen to a book on my walk. I go work out. I have lunch. I play with my kid a little, but I'm still kind of paying attention. But I'm not actively trying to do something all day. I have a group of small cap stock people that I kind of keep an eye on too. So I'm just kind of overseeing a bunch of different things. And I kind of know enough now when one of them pulls me in that I need to focus. So that's kind of the game for me going to the next level moving forward. It's working more that way instead of kind of being a hound dog and staring at my chart all day. It's a little different now.
Where did that idea of not trading 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day come from? How did that happen? How did you make the shift?
It's a shift. I never really thought about it when I was younger because I guess I didn't think about it. I liked what I was doing and I always liked what I was doing, but it got to the point, I thought I could do this forever, grind it out 10 hours a day. And it just started to get stressful. You're tensing your neck and your body and, you burn through your adrenals, you're drinking coffee more, you just start blinking more. It's tough on you to be in front of that screen for a decade or more. And I say, it's funny, but it's tough. So I started to kind of convert to more of I really wanted to have. And then I realized that the reason I made money and what made me successful was really identifying big opportunities that happened a couple times a month, 10 to 20 times a year. And if I can just zero in on that stuff more, I will make a lot more money. I can trade bigger and I don't need to pay attention as much. So that's what I'm working towards now. And I've been doing with some success, just still trying to get better at it, but I've been pretty successful at it. And it's interesting that I think going forward, I'll make a lot more money working a lot less because I have more so I can trade bigger than when I first started. But also you've built up those skills and you know kind of what you're looking for versus in the beginning, you're just in there every day. You're taking swings at everything, trying to figure out kind of what you want to be doing. And then that goes how it goes. But so I think it's a combination of physical stress. What do you want out of your life? Longevity. What does it look like for me? Usually when you go to a certain level, if you want to get to the next level or the level after, it's a different move. It's not the same thing. It's not the same character. You know what I mean? It has to be, and that's tough. That's where the coaching, the personal growth comes in to make that jump. So that's kind of what I'm working on now.
Mm-hmm. I can totally relate to that too. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, you've talked with a lot of people on your podcast and you've been interviewing a lot of traders. So I'm pretty sure we'll agree on this, but what are the commonalities of what makes traders successful? What are the things that come up all the time between traders?
I think that the hardest thing is understanding that we all have unique skills and we all have unique personalities. And if you really want to persist and do this, there's something in there that makes you different that's going to help you in the market. And everyone wants to gravitate towards a style or a strategy and it just isn't that simple because even if you're with a group of people who are really good at something, if it's not fit for you, like reading 10 Qs all day or something, and you just can't take it, you're never really going to put in that time and get that edge. So you have to figure out a way to do something that doesn't feel like work. And once you figure out a way to do something that doesn't feel like work, then there's still a lot of pain and suffering, ups and downs, but you can at least get through it. And for me, I always like trading during the day. I like the excitement and I can be impulsive, which is bad and good depending on the kind of market. Buying highs and doing things like that can be great or terrible. But I learned through being impulsive that I can contain it. I can use it as an advantage. So I traded short-term index futures in the beginning, and it was a fast-moving thing that fit me. I think some people who are more conservative and slower, like trading oil futures, would be a disaster for them. They're always hitting that risk tolerance button in their brain or their psyche, and it just feels uncomfortable. So I think getting on page with that is really important. And then in the beginning, it's just trying a lot of things and figuring out what might work for you. And that might take a couple of years, could take 6 months with all the right stuff around you, and it could take 3 years. And I'm just throwing numbers out. I don't really even know, but eventually you kind of figure out what you might be good at. And then I'm a fan of kind of studying the trades that have worked out for you versus the ones that haven't, and really focus on how to replicate that. And eventually what happens is all the charts and the psychology and all that stuff goes out the window, and it's all about learning you. You can read a psych book all you want. It's not really going to help you trading, reading these psychology books, because you have to learn about you. Like, what am I prone to do? Where do I melt down? Where am I going to throw a temper tantrum? Why am I obsessed with working hard when I probably don't need to because my dad did it and I feel like I have to do it? And I'm not going to get that out of a book. So that's where the coaching, and so that's a long-winded answer, but that's kind of my answer to that, is figuring all that stuff out.
Yeah. I feel like the books, they have a lot of different things that you could improve on, but while there might be, let's say, 10 things, you might need to work on only one of those. So That's usually where all the growth lies. So that's totally right. You mentioned finding something that doesn't feel like work for you in trading. So how would you suggest people do that?
It's a good question. If you're in trading, it's because you either like playing the game, you want to make money, and if you just want to make money, it's usually a tough road. There's something about enjoying playing the game, enjoying the work, and I think people know the difference. There's a lot of people now who are probably into it because there's money. You've maybe made a bunch of money holding something, and you want to have more money, and you like that feeling, which sometimes can translate into a legitimate start to what you want to do. That's not to discount it, but I think when you're in the business and you want to find out what you're good at or what feels like it's not work to you, you try a lot of different stuff. I've tried so many different things. I've tried copying really good traders' strategy. I've reviewed their trades. I've went to dinner with them and went over all their stuff and figured out how can I replicate some of it. I've joined different groups and tried those things. And throughout my career, I've tried so many things, and I know a lot of others have. And it kind of gets to that point where you start to, the best way I can summarize this is you don't know what you are until you know what you aren't. And I find a lot of ways that I'm just not going to fit. And once I kind of throw those out, there's a few left, and then I kind of go that way. So that would be the simple way to put it, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes people feel like something doesn't work or they fail something, so they feel bad and they want to quit trading. But it's usually you have to try a lot of these things to be able to find out what works for you. It definitely takes time. So.
Yep. And I will add to that, I've been on message boards and trading boards, and everyone's having a great time and everyone's talking about their trade after the fact, and it's easy and everyone's making money, and you're sitting there feeling like, oh, why don't I see anything, or I should be catching these trades. And it's just, it's an illusion. It's not really how it is. It may be today, then tomorrow you don't hear from those people. And it's all about staying in your own lane and getting your own thing figured out. And you can get a lot of anxiety from those things. You can get really caught up in losing yourself in that stuff. So there's a way to do it without losing yourself. And I think it's important to go through some of that. And we've all probably been through that, but it's part of the process, I think, to feel that way sometimes.
So what do you do when things don't go well in trading? When you have a drawdown, a tough time, or when you fail at something, how do you get back on track?
I've actually had a drawdown recently, and it's another good question. I think you have to really learn. First of all, I like to identify why it happened. Often it's after my biggest winning streak. So I did have a good winning streak, and then I got hit. And I know I'm going to get hit when I do well after eventually, and it seems to happen. It gets you anyway a lot of times. There's almost a subtle subconscious relaxing and taking marginal trades or letting something run a little bit against you. Just leaks start happening when you're doing well because you're not as careful. And I think that's always a challenge for all of us. So when the drawdowns start, I'm always thinking about that. I haven't actually just taken time off just because I've done well, but it might not be the worst idea sometimes just to get away and clear the euphoria or the excitement just out of your system and get yourself reset. If you can do that. Because when you're trading well, it feels great. You can't wait to come in and look at your screen and this is fun, but that's a dangerous place sometimes too. So when I'm really struggling, I like to just get out a piece of paper sometimes and do a throwaway trading journal where I write down, okay, this is what I think today. This is what I see. If these things happen, I'm going to do this. And then I just see what happens. And I try to obey that sheet and I throw it away at the end of the day and I start over the next day. And it just is a little discipline tool to kind of get me on track. And a lot of times what happens is, for me, is when I start drawing down, I notice that this is one of my coaching revelations, is I'll start to try to work hard to make up for it. So if I make a bad trade, I want to stay up late and work really hard. I want to read articles. I want to go over my mistakes. And I want to do all this activity to fix it. Right now, I want to fix it. I want to make it better. And if I work really hard, it'll mean that I'm going to make my money back. And it doesn't work that way. It actually causes more of a drawdown, because just because I work hard doesn't mean there's opportunity the next day or the day after. So a lot of times it's just laying by my dish, sitting out, passively watching the market. I call it an active pause, which basically means that I'm active and I'm ready to trade, but I'm planning to not do anything. And those are where my best trades come from. So I try to get into that state as soon as I can when I'm struggling. And also recognize sometimes if I'm struggling because somebody I talk to is doing well, they give me an idea, I decide I want to do the trade, it doesn't work out, and then I'm getting outside of myself now, and that can short circuit me. So I need to recognize that that's why it happened, take a break, and then kind of go back to maybe the journal or just the active pause where, okay, let's just hang out for a while and see what happens. That's usually a good place to be.
I think a lot of people focus on trying to hustle and doing a lot of work, while they could be using that time for something like sleeping or something that is going to help them perform better.
Yep. Go on a walk. Sometimes reading a book. You can read a book. Trading stories are fun, or just a fictional book, or honestly, sometimes just watching a movie, or if you have a family, hanging out with them, whatever it is. I try to take more time to just screw off sometimes in the middle of the day when I'm struggling, and it means that I usually have success later because of that. Because the biggest trades for me always happen when I don't expect them to happen. They kind of just show up. And a mentor I had always used to say to me, "You're never going to miss the big one. Don't worry about missing the big one. You just won't. Just stop dirtying yourself. Stay clean around it." And that's kind of what I try to do.
What is your journaling process looking like? Do you journal every day or do you track all your trades? And how do you do it?
Oh boy, I've gone through so many different paths on this. So I'll give you the rundown. I spent probably 8 years every day manually with a red and blue pen plotting my buys and sells on an intraday chart. It took a lot of time, and putting them on a computer and taking pictures of them. I got thousands of pages studying them, and I can't really say it helped me that much. It helped me a little bit. The only way it helps me when I do that, if you're a day trader and you're listening to this, I sometimes you look at that and you say, okay, all my plots are in the middle of bars. So tomorrow I'm not going to be an asshole and be in the middle of the bars. I'm going to be on the edge of the bars. I'm going to be proud of how my plots look. So I would think to myself, be proud of your plots, be proud of your plots. And, then I would say, at least when I reviewed them, I could look and see that I'm at the edges of the range. Or if I'm buying something, I'm buying the top of the range, not the middle. And it would help me with that, like a little bit of awareness. But honestly, all your blow up days come down to something similar. It's a emotional, psychological thing. It's usually your own pattern blowing up. It's FOMO. It's your buddy had an idea or he's doing well and you're chasing. It's you missed the move and now you're buying the highs. It's you wanted to wait for a pullback, but you couldn't wait. So then you buy it and then you buy more and then it blows up. All that stuff that's the coaching work. That's the deep work. You can plot and look at those, but you're just going to look at them and say, oh, well, I shouldn't have done that. But I don't know if we're getting a lesson until we really go into why. So why did that happen? And then you can ask like the 5 whys. Why'd you buy it? I bought it because of this. Why'd you do that? Because my friend bought it and he's trading well and I wanted to kind of piggyback on him. Why'd you do that? Because I'm losing confidence in myself because my stuff's not working. Why is your stuff not working? Because the market's running up every day and my strategy is looking for pullbacks. Why is that happening? Maybe the market's changing. I need to take a break. Okay, we land on that and we can kind of move forward. So that's the kind of thinking I try to do versus just looking at my journal every day. And I kind of internalize this. You kind of get this just without having to journal, I think. I would never tell anyone not to journal. If you want to journal, journaling makes you feel like you're doing everything you can, which is great. But it also can be a guilt, like a checklist task where you feel like, I'm a good boy, I journaled today, I should have success. But a lot of times it doesn't work that way. And that's why I like the throwaway journal sometimes, because it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm doing something for today, then I'm going to discard it and move on tomorrow. And that often feels better. So I've tried to save my trades and I still do sometimes. But if you're going to save your trades, I think the best thing to do is save your good trades that are the best version of what you want to be and really focus on replicating those. And on your bad days, save those, let yourself cool down, and then try to go into the 5 whys or the thought process of why you blew up. So I think those are probably the takeaways on the review process that I would say, if that answers it. It's a little long-winded, but I've had a lot of journaling starts and stops in my career.
That's interesting because I see most people start very strict about journaling, like you mentioned also, like tracking everything, putting this in spreadsheet or something. And then they kind of go a little bit more adapted to them over time. Some people don't have a journal at all, and they don't understand how it's going to help them. So I think you nailed the both parts, which is like you need to have a journal for this reason of psychology, but also don't make it too hard on yourself.
Right, and I think a lot of us we're really hardworking, and we really want this to happen. And the tendency is to just to beat yourself up, and when you're struggling, it's to work harder, journal more, study more. And the mentor of mine used to say, it's hard enough to trade the market, but when you're trading your P&L, like your personal market and the market, you're trading 2 markets. So it's the money market and the stock market or whatever. Very difficult. You made the job twice as hard. And I think a lot of that work around when you're struggling can lead you to be trading 2 markets the next day, which is you're jittery and you can't really do the right things. You need to be relaxed. So it's like in a sport, you're struggling in a sport, you're tense, you're tight. Did batting practice for 3 hours, and then the game starts and you can't do it. So sometimes less is more for that.
What would you tell a trader who's struggling right now? Let's say they've had some maybe good months, maybe some bad months, but they're still not profitable. They want to be able to get to a point where you are not today. What would you suggest to kind of focus on to be able to get there the easiest way, or I would say the most straightforward way?
Do you mean in this current market, or you mean just in general?
In general.
Just know that it's part of the path. It really is. It's up, down. For me, so I can tell you, usually stories are better because it's hard for me to tell you how you're going to be. But I started with the ability to always make money, but I lost a lot of money. I would make it, give it back, make it, give it back. Other people have different problems. So I had to learn to not give it back. So am I giving it back because of how I made it? Is it just you're reckless when you make it, so you're reckless when you lose it? Or am I getting euphoric at the top, which often happens to me, and that's how I give it back? So I still give money back after I make it, but I'm getting better at moderating those cycles. So that's my personal challenge. And the hard work and all that stuff, the thinking I have to work hard all the time, that all goes into that. But I think for someone else, it's much the same thing. It's trying different things and then finding out what's your problem. Is it listening to somebody else after you've been listening to yourself and then you blow up? Is it holding losers? Is it you can make it, but you give it back? You can fix those boom and bust cycles if you make money and give them back. There's things you can do. Oftentimes, when I was day trading at my firm, if I had a really good morning, like say I made 2 or 3 times in the morning what I wanted to make in the day. The afternoon session, I would actually cut my size down in half and say, I'm only risking a part of my day on half size. And when I did that, I would often really add to my day, sometimes double my day, because I was so loose with half size. And I knew that if I lost a little bit, I was going home still with a good day. So that was when you're trading well, those are the kind of things you do. You get out of the trade when it's not even gone against you. It doesn't feel right. You get out. You actually get out when you're making money sometimes because it doesn't feel right. And when you're struggling, it's like, I have to wait for it to hit my stop. Everything has to be max pain. And I think you learn it doesn't have to be that way. And that's kind of part of going through it.
What you mentioned at first, I got a quote from someone recently about that. The quote was, the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance, which I think works really well with what you said. First, you need to understand where you are now, what you're struggling with, how you gotta be able to work on that, and that really applies there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Interesting. So now, what would you say to a trader who is starting now? They do anything before, they maybe read a few books. How would you tell them to go forward?
Observe it like it's an alien planet and you're visiting the planet. And what do you see and what is working and how does it feel? Because there's so much clutter from what everyone else tells you to think. Because right now, you probably do pretty well if you're buying, because who cares what some old experienced buzzard like me thinks, who's seen a lot of stuff, because it's going up, I'm buying it and it's working. Great. And then you learn that works until it doesn't. And that's part of your path. And I think you get stuck a lot of times listening to other people and make your own observations, like see what hurts you and what helps you and what feels good. There's something inside of you that feels right. Like for instance, when I'm going to have a bad trade, often I'm operating from subtle fight or flight. Like there's a feeling in my stomach, there's a little fear, there's a little like forcing feeling, you know what I mean? You're getting like there's an uneasiness and you ignore it and it's a mistake. Or there's a quick little revenge trade. There's a bad trade and then a really quick flurry of bad trades after. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just made it twice as bad. How did that happen? 3 times as bad. And it's really paying attention to that stuff. And I think a lot of that comes a little bit later when you can trust yourself and you know what you want to do. But in the beginning, it's just an experiment process. It's first and foremost, manage your capital. Don't blow up. Like manage your risk in the beginning. Take small bets, lots of small bets, and see what sticks. It's like that quote, do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And then when it stops working, it's like, okay, this has worked for 6 months. It's not working anymore. I'm frustrated. I'm stopped out. Market is changing. And then I need to figure out what's going to work again. And that's how you grow. I mean, eventually you find one tool and that's great. You have that tool for life once you find it. And it might stop working for 3 years, 3 months. It's a style could go out. It doesn't work anymore. Everyone's copying it and doing it. It's being reverse engineered. And then eventually something else works. And then after 10 years, you have 5 or 6 things that you can do and they keep coming back in style. And I think that's why the thinking process is important, because in this world we're in with algorithms and machines, anything that's predictable or programmable is going to get wiped out and you're not going to be able to do it. But if you have an open world strategic mindset, with a lot of different variables. It's very hard to program that, and it's going to ensure that you have a lot more success.
How do you find new ideas for your trading when something doesn't work? Where do you get them?
Yeah, that's a good question. The podcast is nice because I hear people struggling. I hear people talking about what they're doing. It's just nice to hear other traders and what's working and what's not. People bragging, all that stuff is good. The feel of the market. But for me, it's when I transitioned from day trading futures to going into the stock world a little bit, there was a little bit of a learning curve there for me because it wasn't just trading futures during the day. It was like, okay, longer time frame, days, weeks, sometimes months even on my trades, but usually days and weeks. And I need to join some groups. I need to see what other people are doing. And eventually what I figured out is, okay, I know it's going to work for me in this world, but it's going to be a little bit of what I did when I day traded, but it's going to be slightly different, but it's the same core skill set. And that's kind of what happened is, so I reached out and tried some things. And a lot of it was, I did lose some money doing that and had some mistakes, but it was all part of kind of leading me to where I needed to go. So I'll branch out more when I'm making a big change. But then when things are going well and you're kind of buckled down and you know what you want to do, it's just a matter of sitting there and observing where we are in the game. Like for instance, when the market falls or when it's really busy, it's good day trading for me. So I'll be in there. I'll be doing that in the index futures. But right now it's not that market. So I kind of stay out of it. And I just kind of know my cues a little bit better of where to, I don't know if I'm answering it exactly right, but I'm a little off topic.
You mentioned one thing, which is the podcast. And for me, my podcast taught me so many ideas. And just, I can imagine people listening back to that too can get the same ideas from that I got from the podcast. So I can apply every one of them for sure. But there's a lot of it to kind of be able to trade for many years to come for sure.
Right. And you'll find certain people on the podcast that you feel like think like you and you connect with more, and you pick up stuff from that, and just kind of knowing which groups of people are struggling and which aren't. Because right now there's people who are doing very well and there's people who are struggling, and there's good traders and bad traders on both sides of it. It's just the market can make everyone feel like a good trader sometimes. And then other times it's not like that at all. The good trader in a tough market just makes a little bit of money and has to survive for a while until it gets easy. It's kind of like any other business that way. Like a crappy CEO makes a lot of money in a really good market at a technology company. But if you're keeping an automaker floating when no one else can, maybe you're a pretty good CEO for a while. So it's being in the right place for you is a big part of it. There's definitely luck involved, but surviving and managing your risk and putting that work into yourself helps you kind of, that's to the quote in the beginning, trading is hard, but sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's easy is kind of a skill to get yourself there with the right stuff at the right time. And there's a lot of work that goes into being there for that. Because you've heard of the 90-10 rule or the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. And I see it for my stuff. It's true. I don't try to do it, but it's usually a few things that carry me. There's a few big things that tend to really push you ahead. You got to be there for them.
So where can people find you if they want to connect with you or reach out after this interview?
On my podcast on Anchor, it's Trading Life Podcast by Brad Jelinek. There you can leave a voice message on the app, on the Anchor app. Otherwise, JELINBRA1@gmail.com. Jelinbra1, it sounds like. You can just email me a question. And I love answering questions about this stuff, so always open to do that.
Awesome. And Brad, what are your goals for the future?
That's a good question. I think my goals I just worked on this a little bit actually. My personal goals for trading are just to continue to level up, meaning that I'm working actively less, but making more and having a ton of success by just waiting for what I'm good at, just leveraging what I've already learned and making it feel easier and less of a grind. So I'm making progress on that. And then family goals is just to really help support my wife start a business that she wants to support or that wants to start, and having more time to be with my son and give her that time. And I think if I pull it off the right way, I'll do better than I've ever done trading and spend a lot less time just kind of being actively, passively involved, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And what's the motivation for all of this?
I like these questions. These are good burners. This is the kind of stuff I probably prefer to talk about around a fire or something, or a coffee. I think for me, there's always a big spiritual draw in my life. I'm always kind of on a path of getting to know myself and really having a lot of personal growth. And I think trading has always done that for me. And there's a desire to have more of a calm, relaxing, centered life. and to learn to be less impulsive and to really let kind of my own personal magic take over, which means be intuitive, pounce on the right opportunities, and not just be working. And it's all kind of swirling together, and trading is helping me get there. And it's that's kind of a theme across a lot of different areas in my life. It's like, I love to say the active pause. And for me, this goes into, I used to exercise a lot. I still do, but it was always overdoing everything. It was, lift weights and then go for a run and stretch and do it every day. And it just got to be, everything was like that. And I'm kind of moving a little bit. I'm more, how do I feel today? I feel like I want to do yoga today. Okay, that's great. That's what I want to do. And then the next day, it's maybe a more intense workout. And just listening to what you want instead of just going on autopilot. And that's a theme across a bunch of different areas of my life. If that makes sense, that's kind of where I'm going with everything.
Awesome. And so, Brad, I have this question I ask my guests at the end of every podcast I've interviewed. So the question is, if you could give people one piece of advice on how they can become better traders, what would that one piece of advice be?
This is a similar theme that I always kind of hammer on. It's the ultimate journey to know yourself. It's really about you and how you can connect with something inside of you that wants to express itself in the market. And I don't know if I can answer that question for anybody, but it's going to be trial and error, lots of reaching out to people, lots of things that don't work, kind of finding out, back to that point of finding out what you're not to find out what you are. It's questions, discussions with people who have done it, questions with, reach out to people on the podcast, reach out to whoever, be active in developing your network. I was very active. I used to hunt down traders at my firm and, go to dinner with them and ask to see their trades. And I was really active in studying successful people. I really worked at it. And I picked up a few things along the way. And then I realized some things that aren't going to work for me. I thought, this is great that this person can do this, but I can't tolerate it. I'm not patient enough for this, or this is too aggressive for me. And it was just an eye opener. And that was kind of my way through it. So again, I think it's best answered kind of just sharing those stories, because that's what it worked for me. And I think that if you go about it that way, and there's no one set path, and then you'll feel good about what you're doing.
Excellent. So, Brad Jelinek, thank you very much for this interview. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Nice meeting you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.